Hello and welcome to Lincolnshire Police Authority's version of Question Time, where we'll be trying to answer some of the questions posed by you at various engagement events that we've held throughout the county during the last few months, and also questions submitted on the Force and the Authority websites. And here to help me in that task are the Chairman of Lincolnshire Police Authority, Mr. Barry Young, his colleague, Mr. Paul Prislag, who has special responsibility for communication and partnerships.
Hello.
On my left is Divisional Commander, Chief Superintendent Lee Freeman.
Hello.
And next to Lee is the Forces Director of Finance, Peter Steed.
Hello.
Now, we finished our last programme talking about PCSOs. It is a question that is very often asked, so if I could just come back to that briefly. The question is, if we scrap PCSOs, we could have more actual police officers, couldn't we? That's what people really want. Barry?
Well, if we turned off the heating system in winter and made people wear overcoats in the office, it would be a way of raising some money, and perhaps we could have more police officers as a result. But that's obviously crazy, and I have to say that I don't see PCSOs or heating systems as an alternative. PCSOs supplement the work that police officers do. They are essentially the ears and eyes of the police. They get into villages, they know the village communities, they know the local community in the towns. They perform all sorts of roles that simply are not for a warranted police officer who has extra powers that can be used in a different way. So I'm a great supporter of PCSOs. All I hear from people about PCSOs is good, and I think people should stop seeing them as alternatives because they are not.
From an operational point of view, Lee, PCSOs, good thing?
Absolutely. Whenever I speak to members of the community who have got a PCSO, if I offered to take that resource away, or indeed had to, I'm convinced that I would have more letters and more complaints about anything else that I could possibly do within that community in terms of how we police. They're very different from police officers. They don't have the power of arrest, therefore they're not abstracted to dealing with prisoners and other operational matters. They are in their local neighbourhoods a minimum of 80% of their time, walking the streets, talking to members of the public. And if we saw them go, I'm absolutely convinced that I wouldn't be able to, as Digital Commander, fill that service gap. So I think they're a viable resource, and the feedback from the communities and all the data and even the government figures suggests that PCSOs have increased public confidence, and they're assisting my police officers out there to actually target the criminals through the intelligence they're gathering. So yeah, absolutely critical to. Right.
So you'd agree, Barry, that they are in many ways the eyes and ears on the street, in that making their presence felt in local communities.
Yes, and it's just more than that. They're actually making things happen. They're solving problems. They're tackling antisocial behaviour. They're not just there to give intelligence. They are taking action. They are allowed to do that, and we are training them to make sure that they're not just there as a presence. They are doing things. They're solving problems. They're assisting officers making arrests, and they're actually investigating local crime and disorder, which we talked about earlier. That was once considered not as a policing matter that people are worried about. They're the ones who are actually tackling it and doing something about it. So absolutely critical for us.
Okay, Lee, thank you very much indeed. If we can move on now, a question, if I can put it to you, Peter, because it concerns money. Police forces, the question says, police forces are meant to be saving money, but, and I quote, they use flash BMWs as police cars. I have to buy a cheap make of car, says the questioner, if I've not got much money, so why don't you? Fair question, I suppose.
It's a very fair question, and I think the issue is, and the first thing is to say that the question needs to be reassured that actually we always look to buy the best, the most cost-effective vehicle for the role that it needs to fulfil. And in some instances, and it's a rare instance, and roads policing is one, we need cars that can go very quickly around the county, can get from A to B as promptly as they can, but they also have to carry a huge payload in terms of the amount of equipment that they have to carry. In that instance, the BMWs are the cars that we currently use for that because they are the most suitable cars. However, it's an exception rather than the rule. In fact, the BMWs represent only about 6% of the overall fleet of the force. The rest of the force is made up from vehicles that the questioner would be very familiar with. So the majority of our police cars are actually Ford Focuses. We have 4.5 times as many Ford Focuses as we have BMWs. The other vehicle they will see around are Skodas, especially Skoda Octavias, which actually are the workhorse of the community policing side of the business. They are what people are using on a day-to-day basis. And these are not expensive vehicles. They're not luxury vehicles. They're vehicles that are there to do a particular task. So say cost effectiveness is important to us. But inside cost effectiveness for us, it's also how much it will cost us to run that vehicle over time. We could no doubt try and put a smaller, lower powered vehicle into some of these roles, but frankly we would break it within 6 months to a year and would have to replace it, and that in itself would become more expensive. You know, the BMWs are there because of that reason. And I think, just to conclude, there's a useful example as well that we purchase our vehicles off national contracts, so we are dealing with suppliers, we're not dealing with a local garage, although they will deliver it through. But we recently had to replace our 3 mobile police stations, very valuable community resources, 10 plus years old. Rather than buying new, we bided our time and actually bought ex-demonstrator vehicles, going as far as Scotland to actually locate them through the national dealer network, because by doing that, a few thousand miles on the clock, as everybody knows, if you buy it off the dealer's forecourt and it's been registered once and they've done a couple of thousand miles in, you make a huge saving. And that's what we try to do when that's appropriate as well.
So you do what any sensible car buyer would do then, you wait for the ex-demonstrators and...
When it's appropriate.
When it's appropriate. Peter, thank you very much indeed. Another question actually that, again, a lot of them boil down to money, don't they? Can we have more police stations open and for longer? I don't know where the question is from, but he or she says, the one near me the other week had a handwritten sign saying, back this PM. I don't think this is acceptable. I'll come to you, if I may, Lee, in a moment or two, but is that the sort of thing that you, in your part of the county, the south of the county, is that the sort of complaint that you hear, Paul?
I certainly don't hear that as a complaint, but I also know that our local neighbourhood policing team are looking to see how they can keep our stations open for longer and to a timetable, rather than this staffing them when we can and hoping that that's the time people want to turn up. And I know a lot of work is going on to look to see how this can be achieved throughout Lincolnshire.
So, right, so something is being done. Lee, what about in your part of the county, your division? Do you get members of the public saying, look, I've tried to contact you, I only live half a mile away from the police station, it was closed?
I mean, in relation to the specific comment about the lunch, certainly my division, and I'm sure my colleagues in other parts of the county, that wouldn't be something that we found acceptable. So, from our perspective in South Division, we put other members of staff in there to keep it open over the lunchtime. We're currently reviewing how our stations are open at the moment as a force, and how the public are actually accessing those. And what that review needs to do is to understand how the public access our services now. Now, traditionally, people would have maybe gone to the police station, but there are numerous other ways as well, and we have to accept we have to keep police stations open as much as possible, but actually there are ways of contacting your neighbourhood police officer, your PCSO. You can have their mobile phone number, which is on the internet. You can contact them directly, straight to their mobile phone. We're looking at sharing premises with other agencies, again, being located in supermarkets, being located in district council offices. We've got neighbourhood policing teams located in secondary schools. So there are numerous other ways. You can go through the internet with us, you can direct through the mail, and probably the most important thing I'd ask people is where in places like Market Deeping or in Alford and East Lindsey, where we've got volunteers from the community who come and actually staff those stations for us, we are able to keep those premises open for much longer periods of time. And then obviously police officers and PCSOs can still remain out on the street. So again, we need volunteers to come and assist us as well to keep those open.
So part of the answer is in your hands. If you want to volunteer, then you will be most welcome. That's all from the Police Authority Question Time for the moment. Thank you for watching, and don't forget you can ask questions principally, I suppose, through the website, through the Police Authority's website, or indeed through the Force's website. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you once again for watching.